All right, everybody, it's about 5 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. My name is Julianna Byess. I am a violinist and member of the Arkansas Philharmonic Orchestra. Most of you might know me from here, locally in Arkansas. I've lived a couple of places around the country, and this is such a wonderful, truly special and unique part of the country. I came here because, as most of you hopefully know, my father, Stephen, is the conductor, the maestro of the APO, and that's my connection there. When I moved here, my dad had been coming here for about 10 years doing business, and I was coming from LA, a very big city. Really just wanted a change of pace, and I actually came here to go to Brightwater Culinary Institute. Some of you locally might be familiar. And since coming here last January, it has just been a pleasure. And especially getting to work with the APO, I'll talk a little bit about my path with music and the role that music has in my personal and professional life. But I know seeing me, it might not be immediately obvious that I'm related to Stephen because I don't have a single beautiful gray hair on my head just yet. Haven't quite hit 30, so I'm waiting. Every day I wake up, I'm ready for it. I'm ready to go full silver fox. So I see we've got a couple more people, so I'm just going to hop into my a little bit of my background. You know, I grew up just completely surrounded by classical music. I remember some of my first memories really being of sitting in the audience at rehearsals that my dad would have. You know, he has had so many opportunities in so many different places, in concert halls, in schools, in theaters, in churches, outside, you know, all of these venues. And I remember just always being with him and sitting in that empty audience while an orchestra rehearses. A really big part of both of our lives, especially when I was younger, was every summer we would spend the whole time, you know, 12 weeks in Worcester, Ohio, of all places, being part of the Ohio Light Opera Company. A very big love of my dad's life and of mine is operetta. We love it, and I'm so glad that I had such a unique upbringing, being the child of musicians, and to have that just be such a normalized part of my life. It really wasn't until I was much older that I first understood not everyone has that. And even children of musicians, it's such a unique thing to be the child of a conductor, because my dad, you know, as most of you know, you would say he's professional, he's knowledgeable. He's also a huge nerd. He loves music, and he loves every tiny little fact and detail. I'm sure if you brought up any piece to him, he could tell you the temperature outside, the day that the composer composed the piece. So he definitely transferred a love of trivia and just top to bottom exposure with music. One of the most important things I remember about him sort of mentoring me as a young musician was having that perspective of not just being a violinist, not just wanting to play my part and focus on my part, but understanding how the whole orchestra is working, understanding that there's such a magic in collaborative music. And that really became something that I was so passionate about, was that collaborative music piece of getting to play in chamber orchestra, getting to play in a pit for a show. And you know, like I said, I grew up in the audience and seeing these things, but when I was 11 years old, I started to have the opportunity to perform. And I was in, you know, the children's chorus. I would have a little walk-on role in the back. Shout out to anyone who was in the children's chorus with me. Those were some good times. But one of the first shows I was in was the Pirates of Penzance. This is perhaps the best known Gilbert and Sullivan show. And there was something about Gilbert and Sullivan in general that I just really connected with. The humor and kind of the eccentricity and just the very dry British nature of the music and the humor. It was almost like Monty Python for me. It was just something, as a young, kind of dorky little kid, I just loved it. I couldn't get enough. And when I was talking to my dad about it, I realized the same way that me and a lot of us, that we seek out this very comforting entertainment, this feel-good entertainment now, Netflix. I really feel like a lot of these Gilbert and Sullivan shows, they're just so charming. They're so delightful. And for audiences then, I think it's the same thing. They just wanted to be entertained. They wanted to kind of step out of their world, not go and see an opera, not go and see just a classical music performance, but to have fun, to laugh, to see parodies and, hear fun puns and things like that. And I think there's such a parallel there between the type of media that we look to comfort ourselves and something like Gilbert and Sullivan. So one of the shows that we did many times, that I saw many times growing up, was the Mikado. And when I was 17, I came back to OLO to be not on the stage, but in the orchestra. It was so exciting. I love playing with my dad. I am biased, not a pun, but he is just my absolute favorite conductor to play with. There is something very special about the privilege of getting to sit in an orchestra with my dad. So I feel very, very blessed that I've been able to follow him around the country and have different opportunities to work with him. Now, back to the Mikado. I was looking through my books because my dad gave me a score to the Mikado. Back to this piece of us both being very nerdy. And I said, I'm gonna play the Mikado. Well, I need to see a full score. So I'm going to set my violin down briefly. He gave me this beautiful full score to the Mikado. And when I was looking for this, I actually came across this children's book that I had called I Have a Song to Sing, Oh. And it's a children's book just full of these GNS songs. And I thought, this is just perfect. Underneath the technique and the intention of these shows is just beautiful music, beautiful melodies, simple music, something that's very accessible, where maybe someone who doesn't have as much experience seeing classical performances, or they're not as familiar with orchestral repertoire, you can sit down and listen to this music and you're gonna like it. It's, it could be easy listening for the opera goer, if you will. So I was just tickled that I found that book. And for my first piece tonight, I really just wanted to play something simple and pretty. So I'm going to play a piece from the Mikado, and it is about halfway through the first act, and it's just sort of a break. This man sits down, he sings a little pretty song under the tree, singing about the birds, and then the craziness ensues right after. And when I was talking to my dad about Mikado, he reminded me that when I was really, really young, I was very obsessed with Aladdin, and I was terrified of Disney villains. And we were talking about this and that, and he reminded me that when I saw Mikado for one of the first times, the villain, Katisha, comes out with these giant, almost Queen Amidala-esque costumes and headpieces, and I was terrified, and he said I thought she was Ursula, and I thought sitting and seeing this opera and just being terrified by the villain, but I'm doing a little better now. I'm not quite as triggered. So I just love to play this little melody for you, and please sit back and enjoy the show. Once again, this is a song called Titwillow, and it is from one of my very favorite shows, operettas, called The Mikado. hear the applause. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just think that's such a charming little piece, and I wanted to talk a little bit about my inspiration for being a part of the APO and really becoming involved in the organization outside of playing concerts. Last year when I moved here in January, it only took a few months for me to get connected with Jason Miller, our artistic director. And I have to say, especially having experiences working with a lot of different organizations, Jason is so committed to outreach and education. As a musician with privilege, I think it's our responsibility to find communities where maybe music is not an inherent part of those people's lives, and we have to take it there. We went around to about 6 or 7 boys and girls clubs in the area, myself and a few of my colleagues from the orchestra, and we just played for these kids. We showed them our instruments, we talked to them and interacted with them, and I was so shocked at the number of kids who, I mean, not only have they never seen a violin, they've never heard an instrument played in front of them live. And there's something that's just, it's so important to expose kids to music. You know, at some of them, we had a little older, we had elementary school, we had middle school, we had some young high schoolers, and so many of them were shocked to find out that you could study music in college. I think a lot of us who have grown up with music, or maybe we went to an arts high school, or music was kind of a part of our life from a young age. I mean, it really can be something that is associated with having privilege. And in whatever way that you can, whether it's just playing or trying to share music, it's such a vital thing. And the APO not only has the resources, but they have a dedication to that I think it's just invaluable. And so I am truly honored to be a part of this orchestra. And of course with COVID, our opportunities to do work like this has been diminished. But just support from our patrons and people who are able to stay engaged with the orchestra is something that is so important. And I can say firsthand that I have seen dozens of kids just light up when you come in and you take this wooden thing out of your case and they have no idea what's going on, but then you can play something like Harry Potter for them, or you can play Star Wars, and suddenly it's accessible, and suddenly this thing that is so foreign to them is just, there's a connection. And if doing that gets one kid to pick up a classical instrument, I mean, I think all of us, music appreciators, musicians, teachers, we know inherently that some of the best music and some of the best musicians and creators come from the most unexpected places. And so I really just wanted to say how excited I was that outside of getting to play amazing concerts, there really is this outreach piece that is so important to me. Now back to talking about me. After I spent a few summers doing shows like Mikado, playing in the pit, it was just so clear to me, this is what I want to do. This is what I love doing. I love playing and making collaborative music. And so I thought, okay, great. I'm going to go to school and I'm going to be the best opera violinist ever. Let's go. And when I got to music school, it was very exciting, but there was suddenly this shift where, yes, there were opportunities to play shows, but I was being taught to be a soloist. I was being taught to be a solo violinist, and I did not like that. I never wanted to be a soloist, and the same passion that I had for playing operas and shows, I just felt that it wasn't there when I was focusing on my private lessons, when I was trying to learn all this repertoire that all of us learn. And I realized suddenly I have a passion for making music with other people, but I don't know that I'm capable of focusing my entire life on becoming a soloist. I don't know that I have the passion and the soul drive to 100% give everything I have towards being a solo violinist. And so, thanks again to my privilege and the support of my family, I was able to leave school and think about it. I was able to think about what I wanted to do. And it was so important to me that music, this thing that has been in my life since I was in my mother's belly, it was so important for me to keep it as a passion. I never wanted to come to a place where music was making me so stressed, or it felt like an obligation. It felt like it was out of my hands. I wanted it to be something that was still special. And so I started to explore other careers, but I kept that connection to music in part because of my father. You know, I was able to take opportunities playing in his orchestras. He was able to connect me with communities, and obviously he connected me to this community. But there was just this shift when all of a sudden I was studying music in school, and I wanted to have more fun. And there was something not fun about studying this classic repertoire. And so the best thing I realized about not studying music in school is I can play whatever I want. So there was something very liberating about hearing a modern piece or hearing something weird and thinking, well, I'm just going to print out the music and play it. And that is something that I really wanted to bring to my second piece. I just wanted to play something that was a total contrast to something like a pretty melody from Mikado. And I remember when I was watching Dr. Ergene Kong, our concert master, I was watching one of her happy hours, and she was playing the Philip Glass Violin Concerto. And I think that's so interesting. And she immediately said what I have always thought, which is, this is a great piece. But if you ask the composer, they hate it. And there's this thing about some modern music where if you ask a theorist or a composer or like a bass player, they're going to tell you that they don't like it. But there's another side of this music that is just so fun to play. It just feels satisfying playing it as a soloist. And I think it's so funny that there are all these different perspectives. You have an audience member, you have the performer, you have the composer, and they can all have such a different perspective on the same piece. But I was looking through my music, trying to find something fun, and I came across, actually, this suite composed by a modern composer named William Seidman. He's still alive, and he wrote a suite for violin called The Many Faces of Genie. And this was a suite written in 1976, so a lot of rock music coming out then, right? And I think when you look at his music, he has such an understanding of the violin being more than a classical instrument. And when I looked more into this piece specifically, I saw that, you know, at the heart of it, this is a piece written by a man for a woman. And we see that so often in popular music, right? Oh, this is a song for my sweetheart, or this is a song for the woman I love, the woman I lost. But you find that so often in classical music. I mean, every male composer is extremely melodramatic. We all know this. But William Seidman, don't know the guy, can't really say much about that. But he wrote this piece because he was so inspired by this woman's personality. And there are 4 movements, and 3 of them are a little slow, but this one it's just weird. And I thought to myself, this is crazy that such a weird soundscape is an inspiration and a representation of someone's personality. You know, it's this little window, this glimpse into how this guy is experiencing being around his friend. And he wrote this piece, he dedicated it to her, and I'm just gonna play the 3rd movement from it called Dancing Genie. So maybe while you're listening, you'll kind of start to see and hear it through the lens of a guy trying to understand the personality of this girl. So, without further ado, do a little tuning. And for this piece, I made sure my cat was sequestered in the back of the room, because as I found out this week practicing it, it is a 100% guarantee that my ankles are going to get bitten. So this is a cat-free piece. Perfect time for a cocktail. So, there you have it, Dancing Genie. Maybe some of you feel like you know her a little bit better. So please hold as I gently place my instrument. Now, this past week, as I said, my dad was here, and as hopefully, well, maybe some of you know, my other career now is I'm a chef, and I love food. I love the food scene here. It's very unique, it's very fun, and I've had the opportunity to have some really cool food here, but I've also had the opportunity to do a lot of drinking here. And if you've ever visited my house or a Byess household, we are notorious for always having the ingredients, and my dad made sure I said always have the ingredients for a Manhattan. We love bourbon and rye, and last week my dad brought me just a little bottle of rye. Couldn't really get one any smaller than this, so I thought I'd go ahead and use that for the cocktail today. Something that I really like to do is I love using herbs, and probably a lot of you, somewhere in your spice cabinet, you have like some 20-year-old bay leaves. I love bay leaves, and so I'm buying them all the time, but if you have a bunch of bay leaves and you're trying to get rid of them, make some simple syrup. It's delicious, and I have to shout out my mentor, Jason Paul. He was the one that said bay leaves are fire, and especially if you mix them with vanilla. So I just threw together a little simple syrup, sugar, water, throw bay leaves in there, throw whatever you want in there, but bay leaves, simmer it down, little splash of vanilla syrup, done. Now for this cocktail, it's just about 1.5 ounces of rye or bourbon, whatever brown liquor you like, 1/2 ounce of the simple syrup or more if you want like a little whiskey punch. Just do equal parts, no one's judging you. And then if you want to do a heavy dash of bitters, I love that. I love using orange bitters, and I love doing heavy dashes if you've ever seen me make a cocktail. But so it's just rye, simple syrup, bitters. Throw some cherries in there if you want, but try it out. I think it's delicious. If you have some leftover simple syrup, you can throw it in your coffee, you can throw it in your tea, you can do whatever you want. But if you are having a cocktail right now at home, cheers to a lovely Thursday evening. I was very tempted to just shoot this one back, but I'm going to keep it professional. And as we're getting a little wrapped up here, I'm just going to take a peek and see if we have any questions. And if not, I'm just going to play a little tune to close out the show through the magic of television. My cocktail was already ready, so I'm just going to put it down and see if we've got any questions. Well, thankfully there are no music theory questions, so I don't have to lie my way through answering any of those, but it has just been really a pleasure. It's been so long since I've had the opportunity to go to a cocktail party or really have any sort of intimate one-on-one musical experience, and so this was just very, very fun, and I really hope you guys will come back next week. We have a ton of great musicians doing this. You get to see a little window into our homes. And I'm just going to play a fun little tune while you guys all enjoy your evening. So thanks a lot. Make sure you like and follow the APO page on Facebook. Stay updated on all of our concerts. And cheers. Good night, everybody. Cheers.